I'd like to welcome everyone to Software Spotlight, your front row seat to the latest innovations in software for small business. I'm Michael Burnswag, your host. Each week, we are joined by executives at leading software companies to get an insider's perspective on the emerging technologies, business strategies, and market trends shaping the future. Tune in to stay ahead of the curve on leveraging software to boost your productivity and growth in your business. Be sure to visit our website, softwareoasis.com, to access our free weekly software newsletter and sign up for our upcoming software webinar series. Today, we're in for a real treat. We're actually being joined by Leanne Linsky. She is a comedian, actress, and founder of Plauzzable, the revolutionary platform redefining comedy in the digital age. After leaving her corporate career, Leanne pursued her passion for comedy, which ultimately led her to create this innovative online space for live virtual events. So join us as we're discussing her entrepreneurial journey and how Plauzzable is shaking up the world of comedy. Welcome to the podcast, Leanne.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, no, we're our community is very engaged and excited about learning, the different layers of software and technology. And yesterday we actually had a company join us on the podcast from Muddy Robot Games, and they were sharing software tech from that aspect. And clearly today we've hit the other end of the spectrum, and here we are chatting about an exciting comedy platform that you're launching. So I was hoping you could share a little bit of your background and give us an idea of what inspired you to transition from the corporate world into the comedy space and now towards a life of entrepreneurship.
Sure. So, okay. So what my journey? I actually majored in business in college in my undergrad and ended up working for home builder. I worked for a national home builder for almost 13 years, and it was during that time that I took my first comedy writing class, and then from there took improv classes and fell in love with the art. And And then after 13 years of being with this company, I was laid off, and all of my comedy friends said, "Hey, Leanne, you always said if you didn't have this job you loved, you would move to New York and pursue comedy full time." And I was like, "Oh no, people were listening." so, um, so I packed 2 suitcases and moved to New York to fully immerse myself into the world of comedy and acting. And I did. And I ran an open mic for 7.5 years. I produced shows. I performed. I did commercials. I did some theater, and then I moved to the West Coast and I continued doing comedy, although I found myself suddenly spending more time in traffic than I did on any stage because I was living in the LA area. And I was like, this is
Sure.
bananas. How do I solve this problem? And I started doing things online to solve some of my own problems before COVID, believe it or
Sure.
not. So before COVID, and then COVID happened and everybody started doing things online, which was great because it offered this new way of connecting in a industry that we didn't do that before. Everything has been mostly in person or pre-recorded and then streamed. And so, although that was great, it created other issues. So I was like, how do I solve some of those? So although I have a business background and now an extensive background in comedy, I wanted to figure out how do I scale my idea? Like, how, if I can solve it for me, why can't I solve it for a lot of people? And other people like me, which would be comedians. So I went
Sure.
back to school and I got my master's in innovation and entrepreneurship from University of California, Irvine. And that was during the pandemic. And from there, I went into incubators and accelerators so that I could build a team because I'm actually a non-technical founder. I am not
Okay.
a software developer, and that's probably a good thing, so you're welcome. But 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 I had to find the right team, and that actually took me a while to find the right developers who could share my vision because I found that in talking to some of the people, they were like, "Why don't you just do this?" I'm like, "Well, that already exists, and that doesn't solve our problem." So I was really focused on putting the right people together, and from there, we were able to launch a year ago December with our beta version, which has been really cool.
Wow, and we absolutely share parts of that journey. This is my third startup in as many years as I've been in entrepreneurship and business, and actually graduated with a degree in entrepreneurship as well. So we
Oh,
uh,
wow.
we have that running through our veins. But at a high level, clearly there are so many people listening today that can resonate with having been, let go from a company, or from, not being in the career that they envisioned that they would have been in, and had to reinvent themselves. And it sounds like you've done just that. And I think any great creation, and anything that's innovative, really requires, not necessarily just a technical founder, but someone with the motivation and the dream and the vision to, hit that end point, to satisfy the needs of the market. And that's exciting. So can you give me a little bit of an idea of what the platform is now, and what
Mhm.
you envision, and the market that you see it serving?
Yeah, so the platform as it is now is, two-sided. So the tools are I built this obviously with comedians and their fans in mind, but how do we solve some of the problems comedians have in getting their art out there? So we provide the scheduling tools like a calendar and the ability to schedule online shows, the virtual
Sure.
stage. So those online shows actually happen on Plauzzable. We're not using somebody else's software to stream that in. And then also ticketing services. So we added a payment processor. So people when comedians choose to create and schedule a show, they can choose, do I want to do a free show or do I want to do a ticketed show? And if they do a ticketed show, then they can set up their account and we use Stripe and integrate it there so they get paid out on a regular basis and they get the majority of the revenue from their ticket sales. So unlike other platforms where you have to have X number of followers or you have to have um, a certain level or, so many beans you have to convert into tokens and then convert into money. You don't have
Yeah.
to do that here. It's straightforward. If you sell 1 ticket, you get this much money, depending on you set your ticket price and you get the majority of that money and this is the day that it's paid out. So, you don't have to have a minimum number of followers. You just have to sell 1 ticket and you're already making money.
So really, come as you are to the platform, and just get started. So it's not really a
Yeah.
lot of barriers to entry for getting involved. So
Yep.
can you give me an idea, maybe being on the outside a little bit, how large is the market, and what made you focus on comedy as an area to solve this problem?
Yeah, so when you look at comedy, we consume it in multiple ways, live, in person, and also, online on streaming services, whether it's Netflix or, Hulu or whatever it may be, even Zoom or other things that came up in the pandemic. When we look at all that and we combine the live entertainment market as well as the streaming market, those 2 combined globally are over a million or sorry, over a trillion and a half dollars annually, right? And then
Wow.
if you break that down and you look at just live streaming is projected to grow, I think, like 800% by 2028. So it's ridiculous growth because the introduction of 5G, people with live streaming find themselves connected more to the creator. They find it to be more authentic, more real. There's a FOMO, that fear of missing out on a live event. So the number of hours people watch is actually longer when things are live rather than pre-recorded.
Sure. And at a high level, I mean, it's a massive market, as you
Yeah.
mentioned. I noticed. So if you get this off the ground and you get it heading in the right direction, a lot of people may not be happy with
Yeah.
you.
Probably.
but
Well,
but
yeah.
on the flip side of that, I'm sure others will be thrilled. And
Mhm.
it sounds like you're doing it for all the right reasons, at an interesting level. So I noticed that it seems like you're also focusing on the podcasting market as well. Can you speak to that? I saw podcasting and comedy.
So,
Does are they
yeah,
both
so th I think of this in terms of comedians. So, any event that a comedian does, and comedians are not necessarily, I mean, there are some well-known comedians who are your typical podcasters,
sure,
but, this isn't designed, like, to replace or compete necessarily with a StreamYard or a Riverside or things like this. This is different in the
sure,
sense that, comedians are used to performing in front of a live audience, and so in this sense, they could that we give them the capabilities to stream to YouTube and
right?
also to, record on Plauzzable if they choose to, but they can do so in a live audience where they can charge tickets for, have that immediate feedback during their performance or podcast or whatever event that they're doing on Plauzzable, and then they can download it, distribute it, and all of the other methods that they choose to. So,
Got it.
it's really designed with them in mind. Where a lot of podcasters, if they're just doing the regular, uh, talk show and they're streaming, like, to 5 different things at the same time, and it's just kind of them going out into the world and they don't need that immediate feedback, this may not be for you.
Right.
But this is in a sense of this is a typically a performer who relies on the immediate feedback of the audience in which they're speaking. And in comedy, we look for laughs and that reaction and that interaction, and we thrive on that. And we don't typically get that in a setting where it's streaming somewhere and we don't see or hear from those people via chat, because if I'm in the flow and I'm doing comedy, I have to stop and I have to read. That breaks everything up and changes the timing and the cadence and momentum of a comedy set or whatever we're doing in that flow. So it's really designed for people who do actual comedy in mind, and
Sure.
that's we put that's why we share, like, you can do all of these things, and comedians are like, "Ah, this is a game changer," because that kind of, I can get the reactions and the interaction that I so desire as being a comedian right away, then wait for it to roll in weeks or days or months later.
So can you speak to that a little bit? Talk to me about the interactivity.
Yeah. So a lot of well, as with comedy, people, I don't believe that we can replace in person. I think there's a magic to in person and human connectivity. That's just nature. That's how we are as
Right.
beings. But there's this bridge that I think and I know can be fill that gap of between our time of performing in person and while we're honing our skills and while we're working out new material, that we can do this. But in doing so and working new material, like, we as comedians, we go to open mics all the time. Open mics are not what I consider shows.
Right.
Some could argue this point depending on who's producing the open mic and how they sell it. But typically, it's not a book show. Whoever shows up. They get X number of minutes. They get to try out their material and see how it lands in front of an audience. Typically, the audience for an open mic is a bunch of other comedians working out material, waiting for their spot. And
Yeah.
once in a while, we get some fans in there, which is really cool. But it's to say our jokes out loud, because writing something is a different than speaking it, and working out our timing and our punch and any physicality that we may go with it. So that's how we work out what we do. It's not very rarely is a joke perfect from the minute we first say it. We have to work it
Sure.
out. So when we talk about doing stuff like this and putting it out there, that immediate feedback is crucial to knowing if our work is good. So the audio and, not having the delays and some of the other technologies that exist, they may be great for meetings and other things like that, but
Right.
specifically for what we're doing, we need to hear it now, and we wanna be able to hear more aggregate, laughter rather than if one person coughs or laughs or makes a noise, it cuts everybody else out. So those things are really important. So in Plauzzable, we wanted to integrate that, and we did, and that's one of the first things people usually notice is like, "Oh, this is really great because I can talk at a regular, speed or a pace, and I can still hear people laughing. If people aren't laughing, it probably wasn't funny." I know it's not necessarily a delay, but also in the screen layout and how we see people. If I'm up on stage and I have a spotlight shining on me, I probably only see a couple people at a time, truly. in an
Right.
audience. And even if I look out in the audience and I can see there's people out there, I'm not necessarily focused on or making eye contact with one person. And if I am, it's not very long because that's weird and creepy, and uncomfortable for somebody. But I usually pan and I can easily read the room. I can hear it with the aggregate laughter or silence. And I can also pan the room and see a couple faces at a time as I look around. So with Plauzzable, we designed the screen that way. I don't want to have to stop and click through a screen to see how people are doing. So we have it so where you can scroll through the audience and you can see them appear as if you're panning the audience this way rather than this way. And we keep the speaker, the performer, dominant because if we go into a gallery view, what am I looking at? I'm looking to the person who's cleaning out their shoe closet while they're listening to me to see what they're doing. Like
Right.
anything like that can take focus from the person speaking. We've lived that experience, for years during the pandemic. So we wanted to make sure that the speaker has the ability to bring other people to the virtual stage, put them back in the audience, and remain focused on the entertainment at hand.
Wow, this is magical. So you're saying the performer can actually see the audience that's interacting with the show?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
because it's not being streamed from a live club where the
Right.
performer's on stage and you're being streamed from a camera in the back of the house. That because then what would be the value to the
Right.
performer of having you're not getting the reactions. So this is for performers when they're not performing in person and they want to perform and reach people who may not see them in the cities that they're performing in. They can do that on an international level because it's the internet, and then they can log in from wherever, whether they're in a hotel room, whether they're at
Sure.
home and they have a setup, and they can perform and book other people in their shows, be booked on other people's shows on Plauzzable, and then have an audience log in and they can read the room very quickly.
Wow, I can see a lot of other applications for your
Mhm.
technology. I mean, I think it's very exciting. Obviously, you're at the early stages, but really amazing what it sounds like you've put together so far. So, can you give me an idea? Let's say, I was a comedian in the Boston area, which is where we are,
Mhm.
and I, obviously have my day-to-day routine. My clubs that I hit and bookings that I have. Can you give me an idea as to how Plauzzable would integrate with what I'm already doing, and what does it look like from, or maybe this is almost two questions. How would it integrate with what I'm already doing, and what does it look like for a comedian that is on the Plauzzable platform from when they first sign up and register through to when they're actually live and performing? What are the different steps along the way? So maybe that's the main question right there.
Yeah, so, first, how does it integrate with what people are already doing? Um, well, if a comedian is performing every single night, good for you. Like, that's amazing. Typically, even if they are, I know some of the very hardworking comedians that I've seen in my experience, they'll get a few ups, what we call them ups, up on stage a night, whether it's at a mic or a show or whatever. But they're probably also writing at some point during the day, on weekend, whenever that is that they're not out on stage. You can log into Plauzzable and go to a mic or get booked on a show in between all of those other things and just add that to your repertoire. I mean, why not? I don't know of any
Right.
comedian who would turn down a show unless
Sure.
there's something very, very, for whatever reason. It's very rare that a comic will turn down a show or an
Yeah.
opportunity to
So this
perform
is
in front of
adding
people.
to what they're already doing.
Yeah,
I got you.
it's not meant to take away, it's definitely meant to add value. What are the steps to get started? It should
Yeah.
take you a minute to log in. So when you create your account, it'll ask you, "Are you a fan or a comedian?" If you're a comedian, obviously you click comedian, and then it will ask you to share some information about yourself and upload a little headshot, give your bio, tell us where you are, how many years you've been doing comedy. If you have an IMDb page link, you can add that there. So basically, you get your own profile page as a comedian, kind of like your LinkedIn page that shares about you. but it's your Plauzzable page. So even if you are an aspiring comedian and you're new and you don't have your own website yet, this put all your information here and use it. It's not costing you anything. And if you have in-person shows on your comedian dashboard, you can scroll down to the bottom and input all of your in-person show details so that if someone were to find you and say, "Oh, I also want to see this person and, are they in my town? I'll go see them."
Sure.
Do that. Why not? Use it for promotion. That's a shareable URL you can put out there. So that should take you a few minutes because most comedians already know all of that about themselves.
Yeah.
Um, and then now you're on your comedian dashboard. At the top, there's a calendar, so it says a button, schedule a show, and then it will prompt you paid show or free show, your choice, and it will prompt you each way, like answer questions, what time, what date, are there other comedians, those kind of things. Um, yeah, and then you can schedule it for 5 minutes from now and log in and start. That's how quickly you can do it. A fan, same thing. A fan can come in, go to create an account, select fan, and then from there, they have the choice to skip and go right to the fan dashboard and check it out. Or if they want to share more details about their comedy preferences or maybe where they're located in the world, they can do that as well, or they can skip it. Their option. Their page is not public at this time. It's just private, so it has their information for themselves right now. And then, they'll be prompted to follow a comedian, and if they don't, they can skip that and then peruse the talent directory at a later time.
Got it. So as far as monetizing the shows, so the
Mhm.
comedian can set their own rates for the different performances, and you mentioned it was a small fee that the platform takes, which is
Yeah.
obviously to help keep things keep the lights on, as they say. But
Yep.
at the end of the day, would a comedian that's getting on the platform now really need to focus on promoting the events, or is a lot of that happening on the plausible end, or how are fans finding the different comedy shows that they may want to enjoy?
Sure. So there's a couple of things happening. Once a comedian posts their show on Plauzzable, it goes into the all shows listing.
Right.
So on a fan side, it will say shows you may like, and it will list all the shows there. And they can sort the shows by type of comedy and type of humor that they enjoy. So if you want to see things about relationships, great. If you'd rather see things that are political or religious focused, you could do that. If you want clean comedy, you can sort. Um, a comedian is encouraged always to share out that they're promoting their fans. They probably have an email list or a following on social media. Why wouldn't you want to tell your fans, especially people on social media? They're already online. This is an easy
Right.
conversion
Yeah.
to go online, easier than telling someone, get off your phone, get in your car, and come see me.
Yeah. No,
Um,
it's a much easier, lower lift, right?
Much lower lift. So of course, definitely tell your fans. Bring them, direct them to Plauzzable. It's not costing them anything and they can do it from the comfort of their own home. There's no drink minimums, there's no commute, there's no parking fees. And then Plauzzable, we also share that in our list to all the registered fans, our list of people who haven't registered yet, all the other comedians, registered and not on our email list. So we put out a newsletter every Monday, what's happening this week on Plauzzable, so that if you
Oh, fun.
uh, put in your show, it'll get listed in the newsletter. And then also we'll give you shout outs on social media. So if you're a comedian on Plauzzable, tag us and we'll repost, reshare, and let's do this together. I honestly believe the other big thing about the comedy industry is it's very fragmented, and this has been highlighted in the recent events of club closures across the U.S. A lot of people didn't survive the pandemic.
Right.
A lot of clubs, well-known clubs, have closed down, reducing the opportunity. We also see cancellations of shows and comedians for a variety of reasons. And then there's been physical assaults on a lot of comedians
Yeah.
in recent years, unfortunately. And I think that just really highlights what's happening in the industry. So our big mission is really to unite this industry and empower comedians to take more control over their careers and their earning opportunities.
So, other than in club and live events for comedians, really the other possibilities might be, something like this, or obviously being seen on some of the TV networks and the
Mhm.
like, but doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of opportunity for younger aspiring comedians that are just kind of growing their network, other than something like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, it's interesting. With technology, it seems like there are a lot of opportunities, but there's also a lot more hoops to jump through. So,
Sure,
like in person, there's the booker at the clubs, and they have to like your comedy or like your potential. And I'm
a lot of
hearing a lot,
barriers. Yeah,
yeah, and a lot more now because of social media. Bookers at clubs are requiring comedians to have X number of followers before you're even considered.
sure,
And then with social media, obviously, the different platforms all have different requirements before you can even begin to monetize. And then, you know, how much money are you actually getting after you go through all of those requirements? You have to have a lot of followers and a lot of people watching for a long period of time. And I don't know any comedian, well, there are some comedians who write a lot and very well, but most comedians, it takes a while to build up that much material to continually put out there and make money off of it in that manner. So, so we're trying to simplify, take the traditional method of the business model, taking the traditional comedy business model, throwing it out the window and simplifying it down. And that's
S-
why it's like you sell 1 ticket, you make a percentage. And, typically, you don't make any money at comedy clubs unless you're a feature or a headliner, or maybe they'll throw a burger and fries your way or a free drink ticket. But
right.
typically, a lot of people are working for free. A lot of people who are touring barely have enough money to cover their travel expenses. Um, and, it's flat fees rather than a percentage of the door unless you're a well-known name and can have a manager or somebody who can negotiate that for you.
Sure. No, this obviously takes a lot of the layers out of, out of the whole channel there. So this is really very nice. It's very empowering for the actual comedians themselves. Can you talk about some of the tech behind Plauzzable, and maybe some of the journey and the challenges of getting the platform up and running, and getting it to where it is today?
Yeah, I can't give you specifics about what tech we're using necessarily, but
Sure.
I can tell you that it has been. So as a technical founder, obviously, in my mind, I'm like, "Oh, this should be simple," but
Sure.
each developer has their own area of expertise and what they focus on, and even in industry, like some developers only focus on certain industries. So I'm really fortunate with my team that I was able to find people who could really slow down, listen to my vision and my big dream, and then have the discussion about it and be like, "Oh, I see what you wanna do," and be okay with trying something different. I love that about them. Um, and it also in my mind should take, like a minute to do something, but clearly
Yeah.
it
Everything
doesn't, right?
everything costs more and takes longer than you would ever expect. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very expensive. It does cost, but it takes a lot longer than I would think, but I've learned a lot in this process of now, like, even asking the right types of questions, and sometimes I've learned in talking um, to people is, like, when I think something, in my mind, it's like, "Well, wouldn't that be assumed that it would also do all of these other things?" But that's not the way it is, and so each thing that I want it to do, each task, this button should also do this and do that and, or
Right.
look this way, and this should happen. Like, I had to think through all of those other things. So, it's been it's been a it's been a really big learning experience on my end, and also how to communicate clearly, because talking to creatives is one thing, but talking to engineers, is entirely different set of communication skills, and being
Right.
really clear and direct, and, and I think that's been really good. I've really enjoyed that part of it, and, um, I'm really fortunate again. It took me 6 months to hire, um, and then, some people have come and gone because some people were, here in Seattle and some people are elsewhere, and so, It's just
Yeah,
been
managing a remote team is challenging at
right. So
best. Yeah.
yeah, but it's also has its upsides as well. And I'm really I hear other founders talk about their journey with developers and things like that, and I'm like, wow. So even though I've had challenges or my learning um, curve of my own and stuff like that, I look at what I have, and I'm so lucky. I'm so
Yeah, I mean,
grateful.
you're live, right? You're
Yeah,
not even a year or two into it, and you have a solution that's live and getting better by the day. So
yeah. I can
that's
I am so I look at my gratitude list every morning and I'm like, "They're on it." They're like
yeah.
at
I
the
mean,
top. I'm
I'll be honest with you, sitting on this end of the mic, a lot of your peers have multi-year journeys to get a first beta live. So you're obviously doing something right, and having a very clear vision, I think, is amazing. I think that's probably sitting on the other end as a programmer. I think a lot of times having things black and white and clearly defined is what a programmer is looking for, so that they can kind of get something up and running. And sometimes it's challenging. I mean, you were saying, you're speaking one language, they're speaking
Mhm.
another language, and it's traditionally a project manager who's kind of like that gap in between, getting the two sides seeing the same vision. So, from someone who's listening to one of the comedy shows on the Plauzzable platform, how is the experience different, from a live show that they might walk into a club? What are like the pros and cons to watching something on the Plauzzable platform?
Yeah, so I was really curious about this too because in my mind, I'm like, "Oh, they're gonna really love it," and then the part of me is like, "But are they?"
Yeah,
And I did a lot of research before I started building, and I just wanna tap on that because the clear vision, I ended up spending and I thank goodness for going back to school at this time of my planning because I
sure,
did do a lot of research, and a lot of one-on-ones and discovery sessions with, uh, not only comedians, but fans as well, and also people who would never wanna do this and and people who would because that informs me as well. So now that it's live and I've seen fans on here, the feedback has been again, it's been very positive. Um, and I think fans are often surprised. They're like, "Oh, this is way more intimate than I would have thought." And
sure,
especially when comedians are able to talk to them directly and see them and fans have the opportunity, of course, to turn their cameras off if they choose,
right,
and have that anonymity or privacy if they don't want to be in the front row. But more often than not, they'll turn it on and they'll interact, and people who will come back and they feel like there's a relationship building that you
sure,
don't get in an in-person. And so people have been pleasantly surprised and have taken that away. I think, one of the things that I'm most looking forward to is offering fans more show selection, which,
sure.
it's like an Uber driver passenger thing,
Yeah,
like,
you have to
how
have
many
a right
drivers do
match. Yeah,
you have that network effect. So, you need the supply and demand of, "Hey, comedians, there's a lot of fans that are registered on Plausible, but they're looking for shows." But because fans aren't public facing, the comedians can't see them. So they're like, "Are there fans?"
yeah.
So there's this thing of it gets going, but as everybody's in
So
different
you need to
time
find that
zones.
balance. Yeah,
Yeah, so that's one of the things I'm excited about tackling now because this is a new chapter. Before it was like, "Let's push the boulder up the tech hill and get it
yeah,
launched," and now
yeah.
it's like, "Okay, now let's get shows going," and comedians are, like, still learning, like, "Oh, I can do that, I don't have to ask permission," but the fan feedback has been, like, really cool, and talking to some people, they're like, I have kids, I love comedy, but when was the last time we went to a club was before, my kid was born. So now we can put them to bed. We don't have to get a sitter. We don't have to leave. We can do this right from home
A lot
and
of
enjoy a
advantages.
night. Yeah.
And just as devil's advocate, is there uh, do the shows need to be live, or is that the concept of the
Do
platform?
That's the concept of the platform. So a fan might say, "Do they need to be live?" And ask a comedian, "Do they need to be live?" Can you imagine doing comedy to nothing?
Right.
The whole point again is going back to I as a comedian, I thrive on that laughter. Most comedians do comedy for $0. What are
Yeah.
they getting? They're getting that immediate feedback. And if they're not getting immediate feedback or pay, what is the point?
Okay, I got it, and that
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
that answers the question clearly. And
Yeah.
I in preparing for our interview today, I listened to some other segments that you were on, and one thing that struck me, I think you said, sometimes when I was doing comedy, I would show up, and there would be one person that showed up, and everyone said, "Hey, let's call the show," and you said, "No, one person set aside things to be there for that show, and I come, I was going to do it. I was going to make that show
Yep.
happen." And I think that speaks to that point, and that's really amazing.
Yeah. It's so It yeah, thank you, and I appreciate the fact that you listen to some of those things. It's so true. We live for that, and it's like, I I would have rather have a show with one person or a show where I bombed completely rather than no show at all, and because all of those things just make us better and give us something more to work with and is an experience, and that's yeah, that's what we live for.
Yeah, no, that's a huge part of the whole idea behind plausible. So, and I'll just throw this out there because it comes up. What role do you see AI tech playing in the future of comedy and entertainment? Do you see any challenges there that concern you, or exciting opportunities, or
Yes, I believe there are both, right? And especially with any new tech, there's what we know and then there's what we don't know.
sure,
Um, and I'd like to think that all of it can be used for good, but obviously there's a lot of it that people will find ways that are probably not as ethical um as we would like them to be.
sure,
And I also think that happens already, with people, who take other people's material or, uh, there's a code of ethics in comedy.
sure.
I don't tell someone else's joke. They don't tell my joke, that kind of thing without calling it out. But I do think that technology can be used for good, and specifically with AI and some of the things that we're seeing, I think if applied appropriately could be true assets to an art form, and I see even in the future of Plauzzable, we're just at beta, so we're not done yet, and there's a lot of things in my big vision that I'd like to implement that I think could further catapult people forward in their comedy career rather than tangle them up into fear and
Sure.
and worry. But I think there's opportunity there to really help the industry rather than hurt it, and that is my goal, in what I'm doing with Plausible, actually.
So let me ask you. Obviously, it's been a venture of passion to get it up and running. But have you done everything in a bootstrap fashion, or have you taken on some funding, or how are you looking to get the solution to market? And are you looking for funding?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
It's the simplest answer. Oh, yes to all 3. Do we have investors? Yes. Have we bootstrapped? Yes. Are we, have an opportunity for more funding? Yes. Yep,
Okay.
to
And
all 3.
can you talk to the team behind the solution in terms of, anyone that may be, looking to be involved at a deeper level? Like, what what type of tech talent do you have that's been important to getting the solution up and running?
So, when it comes to the team with I look at it as an, UX design, I think is been really key. um, because I think this goes back to a question you asked earlier about, you noticed it said podcast on here and comedy. And this is specific UX, not necessarily for a regular podcaster, but for a comedian doing a podcast or an event in
Sure.
that sense, which is a bit different, right? Um, so when I think, and I also think of my demographics of the people that when I look at how I segment my targeted group of comedians, I segment them in a certain way and have a strategy of how I started promoting this and who I'm going for. I actually have a lot of older users on Plauzzable and which I think is super cool. And so when I think of the UX design in this particular age group, I had to be very thoughtful about what are they gonna need and not overdo something, like
Sure. Making it
overbuild something
easy
just because yeah, like,
to
I
get
have to keep it
online and
yeah, keep it simple and clear for the people I have in mind versus people who are maybe, like, doing 3 softwares at once and all that kind
right.
of stuff.
Yeah.
There's a different mode of thinking. So it's designed for this. So uh, my UX team is really I've been really fortunate. They've done a really great job of really listening. And I've also really learned in working with them of like how to better present my data and like give more case studies of like this is how they're going to use it and this is the flow in which and working that way. That's been really helpful. And then when looking at my front end and back end, you know, it's not just 1 or 2 people, it's a variety because there's a lot of different pieces that go into Plauzzable. As one of my, developers has we've had some long conversations, he was like, "This is a
Right.
very tech-heavy site. This is
Yeah.
not your typical, like, I'm just, throwing out a website, a custom website or one thing." Like, we have a lot of things built into it because we're not licensing everything, through people. We built it all
Right.
ourselves.
Yeah. So you
So,
develop your own stack.
yeah. So there's been a number of people who played an integral role in the development of this, and each person has different areas of expertise and what code they're
Yeah.
using.
And it's interesting. It might be you know, a solution that could become a platform that you could license to other companies as well.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you also mentioned, and I agree with you also, on your earlier comment of this could have other use cases, outside of comedy too. And I wholeheartedly agree. I think the market potential is quite large.
Yeah, but I mean, at a very basic level, you've got a huge market that you've already jumped
Yeah.
into to tackle, so you need to get there first. But,
Yeah.
but what another question for you know comedians that are using the platform now, can you give us an example of a comedian that's been using the platform that's loving the platform and how it's working for them and what they were expecting when they went into it and what they're getting out of it and how it's working with their whole ecosystem?
Yeah. So, one of my comedians on Plausible, she has been doing comedy. She used to come to one of my mics in New York. That's how
Okay.
long I've known this person.
Sure.
And very funny. She books gigs in the city and all over. Um, she's been doing it quite some time, and she still does in-person gigs. She still gets booked. She still produces shows in person at various clubs. She has a very strong network in the comedy community, and she uses Plausible to host her own open mic, which she has done for years, and she had done through the pandemic through another club before Plausible was up.
Sure.
And she's a great host. She hosts a mic. Um, she works out her material, all of that stuff. So when she goes out and does in-person stuff, she's ready. She's ready to rock and roll. So it just supplements what she's already doing. And then she also is now producing a monthly book show on Plausible. And then she, as a booker, she sets up the lineup and hosts it and puts it on and promotes it and does all of the things. So, and she's out spreading the word for
That
Plauzzable, like, "Hey, you can
that's
find
a
me at Plauzzable."
big thing right there. The fact that she's promoting it, because there is nothing in life that will just grab its own legs and just start running. I mean, you need to, with any new business, any
Yeah.
new venture, anything you do in life, you have to put your all into it to get it up and running. I mean, it's interesting. I was listening to a interview with I don't know his actual name, but the Mr. Beast, is what everybody
Yeah.
knows him as on YouTube, and he said, yeah, at a high level, no one will ever outdo me because I give it 110% on every single thing that I do every single day, and I started with nothing, and that's why I am where I am, and I reinvest every penny of what comes in to push things forward. So I think
Yeah.
that's so important and so needed.
It is. And she also, just to add to that, like, she updated her comedian business cards and put a QR code with Plauzzable on it. So,
Oh, that's
right
awesome.
to her Plauzzable profile page, she's like, "Why wouldn't I use these tools?" Like, that's exactly like, it just makes it easier. It's a one-stop shop for everything, because the other thing is every time a comedian does a show, and is booked on a show on Plauzzable, the audience gets to rate and review each individual and leave personal feedback and information rather than for the venue, right?
Sure, sure.
So this way, the comedians have a little bit interaction that way, like, "Oh, okay, thanks, you enjoyed this," or maybe it wasn't for you or whatever that is. But now she has, like, all of her five-star ratings on her page, and, it speaks loudly, and she's a great comedian. Her name is Michelle Durante, definitely check her out. And
Yeah,
she's fantastic, and I'm so grateful.
yeah, and it's a matter of jumping in with both feet to anything you're doing in life. I think that's key. For the comedians that you see doing the best on the Plauzzable platform, are there characteristics of how they're promoting themselves or how they're promoting their shows that are similar? Do you have a top five list of things you should do if you're going to be on the Plauzzable platform to be successful?
Yeah, yes, definitely. Um, One is complete your profile, right? Because if people are on there looking for talent or you're booked in a show, and in order to be booked in a show, you need a complete profile, so people know what they're getting. I think that's number 1. That's your branding, that's your business.
Got it.
So and complete your profile. Number 2, um is, tell people how are you've been doing comedy for a while, or even if you're just getting started, your friends and family and your fans want to support you. And over the years, I've heard so many people like, "Oh, if I live closer, I would come see you." Well, now again, this is a very low lift. You're already on your phone or computer all day. Roll on over to Plauzzable, and you can see my show. There's no excuses. So, tell your fans, tell your friends, tell your family. So, social media, email list. Email lists are huge. Like, uh, well, certain generations, right? So it's kind of, some
Right.
people prefer the social, some prefer the emails, but don't ever discount the quality of your own list, and tell people and spread the word. Just doing those things are huge, and then kind of narrowing that down, when you post, tag the other people that are in your show so that they can like and engage and repost, because that helps the algorithms on all of these platforms. And
Sure.
my gosh, tag Plauzzable so that we can also repost and comment and help that algorithm and have more views, or add us as a collaborator on that post. Um, those things are like, they cost nothing. They're something that most people are on social media all day anyway, so why wouldn't you tell people? And and when we think about, if you're doing a paid show and you're doing like a free show, which do you want to promote more? And, think about, in terms of, like, if I'm promoting a paid show, maybe put that out there a little bit more than I would my free shows, because unless I'm doing 2 completely different comedy sets, Most
Right.
people are gonna go, "I'm just gonna come see you for free," versus a paid. So I think using common sense and competing against yourself and what you're promoting, plays a big part in it as well.
And as far as like the engagement on the platform, what do obviously people can register to be comedians or guests. Is that what you're calling
Fans,
audience
yeah.
fans? Okay, fans. Um, Once people register to be a fan, are you saying at this point it's a little lopsided? There's more fans than shows, or more shows than fans, or
There's There's actually more fans registered on Plauzzable than comedians, which
got it?
is great. That's the way
Yeah,
we would want it,
sure.
honestly. So that's really great. And now if you're a fan and you sign in and later you decide you wanna try comedy, you can show up to an open mic and ask for a spot on open mic even though you're registered as a fan. The only
Okay,
thing you
that's
can't
kind of
do as a
fun.
fan is schedule your own shows, and you can't have your own profile page as a comedian, but you can certainly go to an open mic and say, "I'd like to try," and most of the hosts are gonna be like, "Of course, you can have a spot."
And out of curiosity, the revenue model for Plauzzable, once you're out of beta and live, where
Mhm.
do you envision the revenue model will head?
You mean what kind of model do we have?
Yeah, what do you
Mhm.
envision? Where will the funds come from? More the fans,
So, I
comedians,
look at it
both,
as a marketplace,
right?
and eventually we'll have a SaaS component. So, right now, there's no subscription component, it's just a marketplace, so we make a percentage on every ticket sale.
Okay,
So it's like Etsy, right? And if you're
right.
selling something, then we make a piece of it. If you're not selling anything, there's nothing. But down the road, as we continue development, there'll be certain aspects that would be available, certain features that'll be available only if you're a subscriber.
Yeah, and I could say, I mean, with streaming and all of the other solutions out there, sometimes fans may want an all-you-can-eat type of model. Whether or not they would actually use it, hard to say. But I think that does take away a little bit from the spontaneity and the live performance aspect of it. So, it's a good question of whether or not it 100% makes sense or not, and how do you
Well, the
share that
subscription
wealth?
model wouldn't be for a fan because a fan typically, how many times do you go to a comedy club in a year?
Once in a while, exactly.
Right, you're not, this isn't consumed like you would be on a Netflix necessarily,
Right.
and if fans were subscribing to Plauzzable, on the Plauzzable side, then it's hard to distribute and pay comedians
Amongst, yeah, amongst the
amongst, so it
audience.
becomes very complex. So that I don't really foresee that happening necessarily, unless maybe they had like you could buy a pack or something and apply those codes, but the subscription side would be on a comedian because comedians, there's new and aspiring comedians who might be using the platform just for their open mics and to work things out and to try things out. They may not do a paid show, but then comedians who are intermediate or comedians who are long timers or professional comedians, they may want different types of features that really do different things for them as they move and progress in their career, and they would need these other things. That's where a
Right.
subscription opportunity
Makes a
might come
lot of
for them.
sense.
And also if
Absolutely.
they're bigger names coming in and they're selling a lot more tickets, and if they're doing a subscription getting these other things, maybe they get a bigger take of the door and things of that nature. So the subscription component is actually different. Again, we're throwing out the traditional business models like we know what already exist for performers because they're not working. This is a lot of the problems like unions are having. It's like, how do these people get the streaming service money? It's really hard to allocate when I pay
Right.
$8 a month for Netflix, but I could watch 8 hours of different shows every day. How do you give that to all those people and distribute that? It's really complex. So I'm trying to simplify it down and put it where it makes sense, and also, keep the lights on, right?
Right.
The Plausible has to make sure that it functions and can offer all of these things on a 24/7 basis. So we need to make sure that happens, but the performers ideally should be walking away with their fair share.
Yeah, no, and that's wonderful, and it's a great North Star. As far as the platform itself, does it matter where the comedian is? I mean, could a comedian in France, have a show that people could see from anywhere in the world that could be in French or English, or a comedian in Germany? Do you envision different languages as the solution grows?
Absolutely. I think, right now we already have comedians from a variety of countries,
Okay.
and so they are on there. They are able and welcome to do things. We have someone who's produced shows, from London, and she's had people from Japan and India and, like, multiple countries all at the same time. It's really cool, and it's yeah, our comedy contest winner, we have a monthly comedy contest where people can sign up and compete, and
Sure.
our winner of the year is living in Japan.
Oh, that's
So,
fun.
yeah, we have people from all over, and that's also, I think, a bigger point is there's no boundaries, you know, because right now when we think of comedy, if I wanna go see it live, I have to go and I'm limited to what's available in my area. How far can I drive?
Right.
And then what night am I available? And, oh, who has the venue booked? But in this sense, it's anybody from anywhere in the world, and I can look in the talent directory, I can look in the show listing and see what benefits me, and unlike some of the streaming services who determine who's relevant or, who they've done a contract with, I can only see well-known names, but what if I wanna see up and comers and people from different areas of the world that may not otherwise have the opportunity?
Yeah, no, that's really exciting. So, just in wrapping up, I just wanted to ask, are there some features that you've recently released on your roadmap of to-dos that you're really proud of and excited to share with our audience?
So, there's a number of them. I think for fans, we've really streamlined our register and join a show, UX, so it makes it easier for you to get there. Once you go in and you create your account, you can register and join a show, fairly easily. We have tutorial videos. The other thing is we also gave, comedians the opportunity we built in the opportunity to record. So they can record their comedy, so if you miss something and wanna see it, you can check it out in the past shows library. You will notice there's not a lot of shows in there, and that just leads to the whole point that comedians really prefer to do the show live. Um, that is there, and then, some of the comedians have also, enjoyed the streaming service, so you can sit in the audience live on Plauzzable and interact, or you can watch via YouTube if the comedian and their lineup chooses to stream it to YouTube. So, we're making it, uh multifaceted, to kinda help people out and extend their reach. But the other thing that you don't get anywhere else, that you do get in Plausible and fans really enjoy is our emojis. So although the sound and everything doesn't cut out, if you want, you can use a sound emoji and it will give the applause, like the laugh tracks. You can
Sure.
use all of that at your leisure, and that has been really fun.
Oh, that's really fun. I would say that your close friends must really enjoy hanging out with you, because it sounds like a lot of exciting interactions on the platform. And then, as far as things on the roadmap coming up next for Plausible, what are some of the exciting things that you're looking forward to?
Oh, man. There's a lot of things kind of behind the scenes,
Sure.
and I think it's kinda hard to talk about just yet. It's a little bit early as we're still,
No, that's fine.
the
That's
the
fine.
vision is there, but there are definitely more things to come. I think yeah, as we grow our user base and the number of shows being produced on Plausible, you're gonna start seeing some really cool features come out that you will not see anywhere else.
That's exciting. Well,
Yeah.
for our listeners that would like to find out more about Plausible, obviously we'll leave a link in the show notes. But how would people reach out to Plausible?
Yeah. Okay. So you can find us at plauzzable.com, and that's Plauzzable.com. Plausible. with the clapping hands.
I love
That's
it.
the best way. Check out our homepage, which kind of tells you in summary everything we talked about here today. And create a free account. Explore, check it out. We have a whole page of fan tutorials that explains each of the features in like a minute or less to help you. Attend a mic or a show and get to know the community. And of course, you can always find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Software Spotlight today. That was really a excellent episode, and really appreciate your sharing the solution with us. Coming up on tomorrow's live stream, we're joined by Tom Amate. He's the CEO and co-founder of Entail AI, a cutting-edge SaaS solution revolutionizing SEO strategy. Tom will share his insights into how Entail AI leverages advanced AI to help companies optimize their online presence, drive more qualified traffic, and stay ahead of the competition in the ever changing and evolving world of search engine marketing. So be sure to save a spot for that live stream by clicking on the link we'll leave below this video. And coming up tomorrow, we have so much going on. Tomorrow, we actually have our webinar on human resources entitled Elevating the Employee Experience. So be sure to join us for that. Our sponsors, Team Taylor, Outforce AI, and On the Clock will be joining us for that event. And be sure to visit our website, softwareoasis.com, to access our free weekly software newsletter and sign up for our upcoming software webinar series. So once again, Leanne Linsky from Plauzzable, thanks for joining us on the Software Spotlight.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to check out this next episode with Tom on SEO too.
Sounds great.